I am pleased to welcome Ken Ronkowitz.
Thank you, thank you. I did a talk similar to this in 5 minutes at the NJ Edge annual conference. They call them Ignite sessions. You have 5 minutes, you have 20 slides, you have 15 seconds per slide, and it's really like a little performance piece. This won't be quite as hectic. It'll be a slow down. Actually, if you have questions at any point, you know, just raise your hand and ask the question. I'd rather get them at the point where, you know, they hit you, sort of thing. But there are a number of things that have been going on this year that I think are going to impact what happens in the next few years. And there's this idea of University 2.0, the changing of the university. And maybe it's started already, maybe it's going to make its big push next year. Those are some of the issues I'm going to talk about. These are the things I'm going to sort of stress. It's the end of the university as we know it. Is anybody surprised by that? No, in fact, you've probably heard it before and it didn't happen, so, you know, maybe this is just another rumor. But who sets the curriculum is one thing I want to talk about. What do we do with this big data? You keep hearing about big data. What is the value of a traditional degree? I think it's being devalued. MOOCs. How many people have heard of MOOCs? They scare some people. In fact, my original title for the talk at NJ Edge was 6 Things That Should Scare the out of higher education. But they said that it might be a little strong kind of thing. And it might be a little strong, but it should be frightening, some of these things. They might be good, but some of them should be frightening. Where is the funding? And maybe it will all be open and free. Maybe that's where we're headed. So you're seeing articles all over. When it hits the New York Times, then it's pretty mainstream, right? And they're saying, you know, reshaping education on the web. But the real question, I think, is who is reshaping education on the web? Is it universities or is it someone else? Actually, one of the names that keeps popping up is Coursera. How many people have heard of Coursera? Okay. They've been around longer than MOOCs, sort of, and they're doing some things that might be a little frightening. So let's get a little bit into that. This always on, always online, 24/7 learning, people checking into courses. How many people have ever taught a course online? Okay, it's an interesting experience. I've been doing it since around 2000, which is kind of the early days. Not really, because we had all those correspondence models and things like that, but it was pretty early. And of course, the illusion at the beginning was people said, like, oh, I'll teach the course online. That's got to be easier. Actually, the first time you teach it, for sure, it's a lot harder. It's a lot more work. It might get easier as you go along, but that also happens with face-to-face classes. But that's one item. The other one is a lot of this education is not necessarily happening in classrooms or on campuses or for degrees. And that's a trend, I think, that is certainly frightening to colleges that get money for offering degrees. But it might be a good thing, but it's certainly going to change things. Okay, so Coursera, like I said, is one of them. This is, I think, a big issue, and you can give me your feedback on it, but who sets the curriculum? At one time, it was this guy. Well, not John Hausman in the paper chase, but it was faculty. Departments set the curriculum. But more and more, it's becoming these people. I would call them publishers, except they're way beyond publishing at this point. They're hosting courses, they're doing instructional design, they're doing curriculum development. We were just talking before at the table about how this is moving into some schools. And you also have things like Udacity, Coursera, and edX, people who are offering courses online, sometimes absolutely free. Of course, this happened before. We had MIT put all of its courses online, but they weren't really courses, they were just resources. Okay, it wasn't a course. And people, when we first did that, I was at NJIT, and we said, we want to get on that bandwagon. We want to do open courseware. And we started doing it, but the first sell was faculty. Why would I put all my intellectual property out there for anyone? I said, well, why do you think the MIT people did it? Because what they're saying is, you can put all that stuff up there. That's not the same as coming to MIT and getting an education. You're not going to have the interaction. You're not going to have the faculty. It's just stuff. It's just content, and that's not what's important. Okay? But it's still a hard sell to people, especially when you have faculty that consider their PowerPoint slides to be intellectual property, when in fact it's, first of all, a hacked version of what came with the book, or it's really just the regurgitation of what came with the book in PowerPoint slides with bullets. That's not intellectual property. when I was designing online courses, we used to be part of something called National Technological University, NTU, where we'd put a lot of our engineering courses online, and they'd be used in China or something like that. And one of my jobs was to clear copyright on things. People would bring them in, I said, whoa, these are really nice slides. He goes, yeah, I got them from a textbook company, but I don't even use that textbook anymore. I said, oh, because I didn't notice. He said, I deleted all the Prentice Hall stuff off it. I'm like, he said, but I've changed them over the years. I said, well, like all these diagrams and things like that, where'd you, oh, I've been collecting those for years. I said, we can't use this. He goes, what's my stuff? It's not your stuff. Like nothing here is your stuff. One of my favorite examples was a guy was teaching a computer science class, and he said, these are the slides. I said, they're nice. I said, but all these diagrams and stuff. I said, where did you get them? He says, they're from my textbook. It's just coming out this year. I said, okay, do you have the rights to those? He goes, it's my textbook. I said, but did you create these things? He goes, well, the publisher did it, but it's my textbook. I said, just contact the publisher just in case, because I really want to make sure we're clear on this. Contact the publisher. He has no rights whatsoever to any illustrations in his textbook at all. But they said to him, what do you want to do with this? And he goes, I'm going to create these online modules for NTU, and I'm going to put in some other, JavaScript things and stuff like that. And say, okay, here's the deal. We'll let you use them all. In fact, we'll pay you for them, but you have to give them to us as something we can offer to people who buy your textbook. He ended up making money on it. But he was shocked that he did not own the illustrations in his book. You don't own the cover illustration on your book, no matter what the book is. The publisher owns the rights to that. So this is scary, who sets the curriculum. Right now, it's happening more at two-year colleges, but it might be happening at four-year colleges in an increasing way. But we were just talking about, for example, Ocean County College has made a deal with Pearson. And Pearson, you buy the book, you use the book, you get all this stuff, including a well-designed, beautiful-looking course in their course management system. And if you can't come up with an adjunct, we can even get one of those for you. Who's driving curriculum then? Now, big data is this buzz term this year. I mean, it's been around for longer than that. One definition I found is big data is any data we don't understand well enough to computerize. That's one possible way. But it is also this other stuff, this fine-grained information about student experiences and processes and everything. The interesting part being that this is all stuff that's generated as students and staff do normal business. These are not surveys that you conduct. This is pulling data from the stuff that happens every day. So for example, if you're looking at courses, which courses are getting the most hits, which ones are not? But what do you do with big data? Do we use it to evaluate programs and say, students aren't even using the material that's on there? Gail and I were talking about, how many courses do you have in Sakai and everything. Years ago, I did a presentation at Princeton, and we were using WebCT at that time. They were using Blackboard, but Blackboard asked me to come in and give like another point of view kind of thing. And Princeton was very proud of saying, every course has a Blackboard section. And when I talked to somebody at lunch, I said, but like, how much is actually being done in those Blackboard? We don't even look. Well, I said, but doesn't matter. The professor may never open it up. He might just put his syllabus there. We don't care, but they all have a section. I said, well, I don't know why that's something you want to tout kind of thing. I mean, wouldn't you want to know? Nope. They have intellectual freedom to do whatever they want. And I said, well, see, to me, that's kind of a con to say that kind of thing. But all right, so that's what they do. Everybody has it. Now, the people who get into the other side of this talk about the learning analytics and say that students and instructors will both benefit from this information. I think it's here to stay. I don't think higher education can ignore it. My fear factor is what will be done with the data. Like for admissions, it might be useful to pull big data on, like what freshmen are doing, what makes them successful, that sort of thing. But what if it also tells you which students to accept and which ones not to accept? Because a certain group of people based on big data don't succeed. They don't make it past their first year. What if it tells you that there are certain gateway courses that are causing students to drop out? This is an actual study I've been looking at recently for community colleges. Then we got to do something with those courses. Anything from restructure them, teach them differently, eliminate them, offer them at a different time, in a different format. something has to be done because they're blocking students. So big data. How many people have heard anything about big data in a way that's kind of influenced their department or anything? Okay, well, it's coming. What was it you heard about it? Just briefly.
We just have a lot of data about our developmental programs.
Oh, yeah. That's a big one.
Yeah, and how many students that are succeeding through it and how we need to restructure courses.
Now, at the community colleges, developmental basic skills programs are huge. The trend at 4 years is to make believe we don't have them. Okay, like at NJT, what they wanted to do is, 099 sounds like, we never should have accepted the kid because he can't even test into Comp 1, so how do we do this like during the summer in a special, there's ways to get around that because like if that student can't cut it in Comp 101, what's he doing being accepted to the college? Well, we accepted him for his math skills, and we don't care that much about the Comp 1, so we'll get him through Comp. It might take him 2 semesters. But he'll still get the same credit, kind of thing. Okay, moving from big data. Now, I'm not a CIO kind of person, and really, there's 2 ITs to me. There's information technology, and then there's instructional technology. That's the one I like. But when they say IT, they always mean information technology. So EDUCAUSE did a big CIO constituent group, and they asked people, where is funding going to come from in the next few years? And it's a range. New revenue, like new fees or selling some of your services. Does Rutgers want to market some of its services out there to other colleges? Maybe offer something to community colleges? Cut services, always a consideration. More open source stuff. I mean, if you went to Sakai, one of the scary things, we went to Moodle at NJT, one of the scary things was we looked at it and said, we think this might be better than the WebCT that we're using. But some other people looked at it and said, you mean it's free? Yeah, like free kittens, right? There's a cost that comes with this. I mean, you're going to have to provide staff and everything. You're not going to have like a company to go back to and everything like that. But they're like, but it's free, right? Yes, it's free. Free has a cost, as I will mention. Share services with other institutions. That's a trend that's happening. Pair your services. And of course, there's always maintain. Nothing new. Let's just keep what we've got and keep it running. It's an old server, but we can make it work. Okay, it'll be a little slower, but we can make it work. Then we have MOOCs. Okay, MOOC, which stands for massive, and maybe they're massive. They're not all massive. Open, they're sort of open. Online, yeah, that's for sure. They're definitely online, and they're a course, sort of. Some of them are a course. So most of you have heard something about MOOCs, but there actually are 2 kinds of MOOCs if you go back. MOOCs are not like something from 2012. They've been around for a while. There's XMOOCs and there's CMOOCs. Okay, CMOOCs, the C usually being knocked up as constructivist, a theory. These are very much like our formal courses and the online courses we know. And this is what Coursera and edX and those companies are offering. This is a very formal, traditional kind of course structure where the content is teacher provided and it's kind of teacher centered, and the people in the MOOC are expected to learn what they're given and be able to prove that by giving something back. Okay? CMOOCs are a little bit different. Okay? They're more learner centered, and they're more about like creating groups online, and the teacher kind of backs off. You would think this would be the big one for MOOCs, because I'm in a MOOC right now. We're just finishing up a Stanford MOOC on creativity, and I think there are 39,000 people in the class. You say, boy, I wouldn't want to teach that class, unless I got paid per student, of course. But I have no interaction with the teacher of the class, obviously. No personal interaction. I mean, I see her lectures, and I do her assignments and things like that. But I work with little teams that they place me on, or I self-select or something like that. Everything's done by the students in the MOOC. Now, someone has to assess it, but I'm not getting a grade or credit, and it's not part of a degree, so the assessment can be different. So the assessment for this particular course is you have to assess 5 other students. 5 other students will assess you. It's very peer-oriented. You post, everybody can see all of your stuff and things like that. That's a very different model from this traditional model that we're used to. But if you take a Coursera or an edX course or something like that, they're very much like that. There might be tests at the end, that sort of thing. And assessment is, of course, the big thing. If Rutgers decided to do some MOOCs and give some kind of credit for it, not 3 credits towards the Rutgers degree, but something, a certificate, there's badges people have talked about and things like that, how do we know that she signed up for the class and she's the one who did the work and actually gets some credit for it? Of course, we've had this problem in online education before. In fact, Middle States and all those people have been looking at that for years and hit on it harder and harder every year. How do we know that Joy is the person in the class who actually took the test? Could be her husband took the test or some other student or something like that, you know. So MOOCs, let's stay with MOOCs for a little bit here. Called by the New York Times the single most important experiment in higher education, which I kind of doubt. I would say maybe the personal computer or the internet or online learning or software and some other things may have been more important experiments. But this is the buzz that it's getting. This is going to change everything. I don't think MOOCs will be the answer. I think MOOCs will push schools towards some new kind of university. Because all of these things sort of overlap. I think MOOCs will affect the degree, as I'll talk about. But it won't be MOOCs. But if you don't know something about MOOCs, if you haven't heard about them, take a look online and look at some things. Actually, take one. You'll probably do what I did the first 2 times I took it, and would just bail out. Because I just didn't want to do it, and there was no reward at the end for me. And I looked at it, and I said, oh, this is kind of silly and everything. Actually, the one from Stanford, good university, right? Not a great course. Not really that good kind of thing. Not that impressed with it. But I want to see what it's all about. Okay, last on MOOCs. The other thing is, it was just last fall that 2 Stanford computer faculty started Coursera. That's, you know, they broke off now. They're making money at it now. They started to offer them. And then in April of this year, 4 other universities signed on to Coursera: Princeton, Michigan, Stanford, Penn State. You got big names, okay? These are not little schools that are playing with this. These are the big guys, which has always sort of been true. When I was at NJIT, I made the push for us to get onto the new thing that was coming called iTunes U with Apple, okay? The university did not like my proposal. I said, come on, I said, this is going to be big, this is going to be big, we should do this kind of thing. We didn't get into the first experimental group, which was like Duke and a few things. I said, are you guys crazy? I said, look at the names that are being attached to this. You don't want to be that name. So luckily we got on the second round, so when they launched it, we were part of the Sweet 16, the first 16 schools to be on iTunes U. Did it change education? No, but it's related to this whole MOOCs and open sourcing and putting material out there, okay? It was a big deal at the time. And you wanted to be in with these other names. You wanted to be up there with Duke and Stanford and MIT and, you know, all those schools that were in there, okay? Actually, I did a talk at Rutgers for Apple about iTunes U, trying to introduce iTunes U to Rutgers. And I remember there was one faculty member who I think thought he had got me on the question. And he raised his hand, he says, well, if I put all my lectures on iTunes U, why would anybody come to my class? And I said, well, if I could get everything from your lectures, I wouldn't come to your class, and no one else should come to your class either. He was kind of taken aback. I said, that's the whole point. If your course is just as good by me watching 15 lectures on iTunes, then your course sucks. Okay? You better be doing something in that classroom besides talking at me that makes this work. Okay? That's a frightening thing. Maybe not a nice thing to say to faculty, but being faculty, I can say it. But that's true. There's got to be some added value to it. Like you're saying, I mean, if you take the things from the textbook and put them up on it has some value, and it may have been well designed, but hopefully you're bringing something else to it. Okay? And that was why MIT was perfectly fine to put all that stuff up there, because that's not what you get if you go to MIT. But we're willing to open it up to people, okay? And then in July, 12 more universities signed agreements with Coursera. And this is just Coursera. This is not all the other places, and a lot of schools are doing it on their own. So I don't know if Rutgers has a MOOC thing going on, but you know, Rutgers could often offer these courses just as Rutgers, you know, like an MIT kind of model. But you know, you got to deal with unions and lots of different things too to get this rolling. All right, off MOOCs. Open everything, as I like to call it, okay? Not a new trend, Okay? We've had open source and open software, open textbooks, open courses, open learning. This is kind of the way that they've progressed timeline-wise. I mean, open source and open software has been around for a pretty long time, at least 10 years that it's been, seriously used in things. Open textbooks is a little bit newer. Open courses and open learning is where we are right now. Anybody use an open textbook in their class? That changes the publishing model. Now, I've worked with a consortium of community colleges for open textbooks. When I teach a course at the community college, it's kind of a different population. I'll say, how many people bought the textbook for this class? Be honest. Maybe half. Maybe half. Which means I'm going to talk about what's in chapter 9 and kind of gloss over some things because they don't even have the book. And they'll say, well, there's a copy in the library on reserve and I can look at that. And I'm like, oh man. But there are open textbooks that I can provide for free to a student. Now they might be PDFs, so they might be a little unwieldy that way. Sometimes they're available as printouts from certain companies. We'll offer them where they'll print it out for $12. So they can get a paper copy if they want. You can make deals with bookstores and things. But this also frightens people. In fact, I did presentations at like 9 colleges in New Jersey about open textbooks because I had become part of this consortium. I hadn't done one at my own community college, Passaic. And I brought it up and I said, this might be a good thing for like a faculty development day or something like that. And one of our VPs said, oh, but that means they won't go to the bookstore, and we have a deal with the bookstore where a percentage of the sale of the books goes to the scholarship fund. I'm like, but this means more to education. But it didn't fly. Now, certain things you may not be able to find an open textbook that's available. Some people think they're all like just discarded books from 10 years ago that are no good, so the publisher put them up as open textbooks. There are some old ones, but there's some new ones too. But people put them up for different reasons, and some people create their own textbooks and put them up as open textbooks. Sort of like the 99-cent Kindle download type thing. You're not making a whole lot of money, but I'm okay with that. But for example, if you teach math, if you're teaching a calc course, okay, and you could offer parts of 10 calc books, some a couple years old, some 10 years old, really has it changed that much? You could pick and choose and build a book out of 10 different textbooks. Textbook companies offer this too. Pearson will let you do that. We've got 5 books on your subject, pull whatever chapters you want, we'll put them together, we'll print them up, we'll sell them to your students for $165. Okay? You can put together a textbook. So I said, why don't we have courses where we're just handing them the textbook for free? Because the textbook's not the secret weapon, okay? They're not going to learn just by having the textbook, but I'd like them to have the textbook at least, okay? And of course someone said, well, even if you give them the textbook for free, some of them are not going to read it. Right, and that's always been the problem, okay? So you're teaching your lit course and you're talking about a short story, and only 5 people in the class have read the short story, so how do we have a discussion on the short story? Read it in class? No, we're not in the 8th grade, so we're not going to do that, okay? But yes, open textbooks are a way in. Now, it's free. That's what we love. Google Apps. It's free, right? It's free. You have Google Apps, right? It's free. How can you not like this? Well, one of the things I think people need to think about with the it's free is if you are not paying for the service, then you are the service. Google's not giving this away for free for free. They want something back. One thing they want back is big data. They want to know what you're doing with it, how you're doing it. They're mining that data for their own purposes. Now, I don't think they're evil. Their motto, is do no evil. Do no evil is Google's model. Do no evil. Okay? And I don't think they're evil, but they want all that. So when you use Gmail, they're reading all of your email, looking for keywords so they can put ads that, are based on your thing. They don't really care what you said, but they do care what you said. So they're mining it. So any of these free services do have a cost. One of the costs is big data. There are other things that might be attached to it. Okay? I think companies like Google are very likely to get into education in the next few years in a much bigger way than Google Apps. I mean offering a course management system, offering content, offering a way to certify you. Now, how many people have heard of badges, getting badges for things? Okay, this came out of the app world, and things like, I check in on Foursquare, and if I check in 5 times, I'm the mayor, and I get a badge. And people say, like, why do you care? Well, I don't, except, when I go to Egan's in Montclair, I get a free appetizer if I'm the mayor. So, that's pretty cool, okay? But these badges are like an alternative way of saying that someone has done something, okay? They may not seem appealing to you, okay, but they are appealing to other people. The big one, I think, is this, the end of the traditional degree. What it will be replaced by is the question. Certificates, badges, corporate endorsements, I think, is something. Hey, how about this? Just the desire to simply learn. Hey, I really don't care if I didn't get a degree, I just want to learn how to program, okay? Or competency-based degrees, which is a big one. I'll just mention corporate endorsements because any people who are IT people, you didn't have to have a computer science degree at one time to get certain jobs. If you were Novell certified, okay, that got you a job, okay? You didn't have to have any college, okay? People accepted that. Microsoft certification, people accepted that. That's the kind of thing I think we might be moving towards. For this job, you don't need a degree from Rutgers. You need that certificate from Rutgers, which requires you to take 6 courses, okay? The competency-based degrees means changing what a degree looks like. Look at the names of the people who are playing with this. Lumina, Gates Foundation, not colleges. But they're getting people like other colleges to go into it. Oh, look, Northern Arizona is partnering with Pearson. Okay, it all becomes clear. Okay, but this idea of offering a degree that's based on proving your competency at being able to do something. One of the big ones for this that have been around for a while is Goddard College. If you've never heard of those, they were kind of the creators of the low residency semester. Okay, and I'm sure you must offer some low residency courses like low residency MBAs and things like that are a big thing. Okay, if this gets even bigger, okay, this could change the traditional degree. The fact that you only need to be on campus for 1 week a semester in order to complete the work, it changes a lot of things. Of course, when your president hears that this means we don't need to expand parking or dormitories or things, they'll still pay the same tuition, but you don't have to offer all those services to them. That's really appealing. Like Sakai, it's free. We won't pay Blackboard anymore. Wow, that's great. Don't ignore K-12. A lot of things start in K-12, and I know higher ed has a kind of bias looking at K-12, but K-12, a lot of things are happening in K-12 that I think will bubble up at some point. They're looking at things like giving students grades and grouping by age and ways of proving competency, things that maybe are starting there and will show up being there in the higher ed market. So are these exaggerated warnings? Everybody's heard about the death of fill in the blank, the novel, theater, movies, broadcasts, libraries, liberal arts, CDs, DVDs, software. It's all, the end of science was a book, right? And yet they're all around. We didn't go paperless. We're not all telecommuting. Face-to-face education isn't dead. People will always pay money to come to a campus and everything. Exaggerate it? Possibly. However, these are real things to think about and somewhat fear. Okay? Going into the future, a couple of things that I would look at is, first of all, this is a big thing right now. This is real. Getting students through faster and getting them ready for work, especially in the 2-year colleges, but also in 4-year colleges. Okay? The federal government looks at how long it takes your 4-year student to get through 4 years. Okay? They expect them to do it by 6. Okay? Used to be when you're an engineer, well, that's always 5 years anyway, right? But get them through by 6, but not enough for even getting through by 6 years. Okay? They want that to change if you want money. Maybe one of the things that will come in the future is replacing that first 2 years of college with some online hybrid or high school initiative. This is already around. New York has this in some of its schools where the first 2 years of high school for these students is high school. Second 2 years are all courses from a community college. When they graduate, they have an associate's degree and a high school degree, and then they can decide if they want to go to a 4-year or start a career. That's a new model. Access, I think, will change. Maybe the traditional college will become, once again, something for the elite. Not everyone will do that. Some students are still willing to pay $40,000 a year to go to that school, but a lot of people aren't. And that might mean that some gaps and divides return or emerge. There might become gaps, you know, not generational gaps, but other kinds of gaps that we've heard about before. So, Horace Mann, schoolhouses are the Republican line of fortifications. I don't know about that. What it might be is a little bit more like trying to switch out things, and it's a delicate balance. How are we going to transform from one to another? Pull that thing off. It took about 25 years for those things I had up at the beginning to really disappear and for things to change. How many people know what a floppy disk is? You know, the younger people know it because it was in a textbook. It showed a picture of one or something like that. They go, and they weren't really floppy. They weren't floppy. So maybe it'll take 25 years for this to happen too. I think it'll go faster than that. But my idea is that it's transforming. It has started. I think it'll kick into gear in 2013. I think all of those things are issues that if they don't frighten you, you should at least be alerted to. Okay? If anybody wants to contact me, email, at Twitter. This is my blog, Serendipity 35, which I've been doing for a while on ed and technology and where they sometimes cross paths. Gets an amazing number of hits. I never understood why, like 1 million a month kind of thing. And I'm willing to take questions or answer, or maybe we're going to sit in afterwards and have a discussion. I don't know. Thanks.